Hello and welcome to another edition of the CBB Super Show. I'm your host, Walt Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85, flying solo tonight, just doing a Monday morning, I don't even know what day it is, it's been a long weekend, Monday evening kind of recap of, the first two rounds of the tournament, looking ahead at the Sweet 16 pairings, giving my thoughts, talking a little bit about the NIT 2-game slate, the 4-game slate, which is posted with salary for Thursday. Talking a little bit about CBI matchups. We had some CBI games today to grind, talking a little bit about any betting opportunities there. There's a CIT game tomorrow between UTEP and Southern Utah. I like a side there, talking prize picks, just generally talking basketball, decompressing after a very long 4 or 5 day stretch there, with that first round just being so wacky as can be. So, appreciate you hanging out with me if you are. If not, and you're watching on demand, definitely smash the like button for me. And like I said, mainly just going to be kind of, hanging out here, using this as a time to just talk basketball. We're so, always by the game by game breakdowns and everything. And you guys love that. And I'm going to continue to do that. But I'm just going to kind of harp on some of this stuff. So, for the final, stretch here, Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4 slates, championships, showdown, there will probably be, one or two more NIT slates as well, depending on how they do it. Would have been nice if they added the 2 CBI semifinal games to this slate for a 4-gamer, but that didn't quite happen. But plenty of opportunities still between that, prize picks, props, betting. There's just so many different opportunities to win money for March Madness here before it's all said and done. So definitely keep hanging out with FTN, FTNdaily.com. If you go to the pricing section, you can see there is a gold package, which is all niche sports. If niche is your thing, like it is for me, you get 20% off using the code DUB. Basically gets you, everything from NASCAR to collegiate sports, esports, tennis, which we're very successful at. Throughout the summer, I always mess around and grind WNBA quite successfully. Aussie football, Canadian football. I'll probably get back into esports a little bit as well. I'm not going to write it by any means, but just do my thing with niche. Also, for those of you who continue to follow me, after the season ends, I'll be talking transfer portal stuff. I'll be writing preview articles for college football all summer long. I will be giving my, portal write-ups, conference previews, stuff like that. Just, all summer long, I'm going to have that stuff. So if you generally just like good content, quality content about college sports, then continue to check my show out, any of my write-ups, which will be quite a few free ones throughout the summer as well. All right. So the first thing I do want to talk about on the show tonight is I think I will start with the Sweet 16, and then we'll get into the 2-game NIT slate and kind of even talk into the CIT CBI matchups, like I mentioned. So, looking at it, it's a crazy Sweet 16, right? We somehow get all these upsets, yet we end up with not only Gonzaga and Arizona for 1 seeds, but Kansas as well. So we have 3 1 seeds into the Sweet 16, despite all of this chaos all around them. I do find it interesting that the ACC is actually, one of the highest conferences left in terms of team exposure. SEC and Mountain West, which were the 2 conferences that were really hyped up. Obviously SEC, thought of as one of the best conferences in the country. I know Big Ten as well, but Mountain West got really hyped. They didn't win any games. SEC is, lost the Vols, which was crushing. It was a crushing blow for me in that Sirius XM league. Auburn, a crushing blow. I can't even believe it. Like, you would expect Rick Barnes to make a mistake / just get out coached in March, because that's what happens to him. And that Vols loss didn't really shock me as much as I probably made it seem. But the Auburn loss to a Miami team who has incredible coaching from Larinaga. Their guard play is amazing, but there's just no excuse that Pearl didn't have his guys ready. Kessler, picking up those 2 early fouls, barely playing. The second half, barely playing. Like, I don't know what that was about. Jabari Smith looked good in the second half, but the problem with Auburn ended up being, and it betrayed them, was the lack of consistent guard play. Wendell Green, doesn't have that experience just yet. Katie Johnson played for Georgia last year, where he just took as many shots as he could. He wasn't, experienced. Zep Jasper was experienced, but not talented enough at that level. Not a shot maker. And it just betrayed them. So I think with the transfer portal, which has some amazing names, you guys probably saw me tweeting, retweeting, posting a lot today about portal stuff. And I think Bruce Pearl will make it a priority of his to get into that portal and find somebody, like a Nelly Cummings from Colgate, who's a very gifted scorer, 3-point shooter, capable passer, somebody like that. If he had Nelly instead of Jasper this year in this team, I think they would have probably won that game against Miami or gone further. Auburn is really at their best under Coach Pearl when they have, just a plethora of 3-point shooters around them, consistent ones, high-level defenders, and they're able to run that, chaotic type of pace and matchup defense that they play. And they just didn't quite have it this year. But they do have a nice base to go on. Obviously, Jabari Smith won't be back. Kessler, I would imagine, comes back. He'd be very smart too. Green is going to be likely a starter next season. We'll see what KD does. But, I'd like to see Auburn go out and get Nelly Cummings. And I will be doing a show this summer as well. Actually, probably right after the tournament because of transfer portal moves. Just making a portal show about my wish list / moves that have already been made. Iowa State beating Wisconsin. Wisconsin, they lost Chucky Hepburn. That was tough. It's an injury that obviously hurt them quite a bit, not in terms of scoring, but, leadership, facilitating, running the offense. It's not as if Iowa State was doing anything that great. If Wisconsin could have generated any points there, they would have definitely won. I do think that Iowa State is in for a rude awakening. I will give all the, flowers, as they say in the world, to TJ Otts. He has been amazing this year with what he's done with his Cyclones team. Otzelberger just is taking this team, this roster to 22-12 after what Steve Prohm struggled to do. It's like, with all the coaching stuff going on, I'm hearing people bringing up Prohm's name. Like, I don't know how he could ever, after that 2-22 season, and seeing what TJ did with his roster, get a coaching gig. And I don't want to be mean to the guy, but I just don't know how he would get a coaching gig. So really, really quite unimaginable there. But starting with that matchup, Iowa State versus Miami, I definitely feel like Larinaga is onto something here. I think Miami ultimately goes to the Elite Eight. I did not think there was any snowball's chance in hell for them to beat this Auburn team. I did not see that happening. I just couldn't even possibly fathom it. Like I said, there was just no way. Somebody in the chat asking about Xavier. I'll get to that in a second. But they did. And it's the guard play of, Cameron McGusty, Isaiah Wong, Charlie Moore, who's been phenomenal, Jordan Miller, who had a really nice game against Auburn. God, Jordan Miller's becoming such a stud. They get enough out of Wardenberg to be, dangerous. And I think ultimately they probably, walk away with a win over this Iowa State team and take it to the Elite Eight. The Providence versus Kansas game is intriguing. I think the public's going to be all over Kansas. To me, I watch a lot of these games, and the ones that I don't get a chance to watch live, I go back and play them, replays and watch them, and while I'm doing other stuff, and I have it on and I'm paying attention and listening. Kansas hasn't impressed me. Oshaya Abaji, who I love, has been just generally horrible for the last 4 to 6 games. Remy Martin is coming on. He's looking like the Arizona State Remy Martin. I have to give credit where credit's due. Remy Martin has been phenomenal the last couple of games that he's been unleashed by Bill Self. But the inconsistency now of Agbaji, the fouling of David McCormick / Bill Self's random benching of him, Jalen Wilson's kind of inconsistent nature lately, DeJuan Harris being mostly a defense guy. I just don't know that this Kansas team is long for this world. I think that the Friars, I'm leaning towards betting the Friars. I think the Friars are a team that has a very good chance to win this particular matchup. And like I said, I think everybody's going to be hovering towards that Kansas side right now. DK has it -7.5 for the Jayhawks. I like that plus 7.5 for the Friars. I think they can do it. Kansas defense, which I overrated a lot this season, especially in DFS purposes for the first like month and a half of the season, I would avoid them thinking that they were better defensively than they actually were because the numbers said so. But once I watched the game and I could see it, that the defense just wasn't as good. But with a guy like Remy Martin, going nuts, they definitely have a shot. But I think the Friars at minimum cover, but I think they have a chance to win. I think that the way this Friars team is coming on, the way that Noah Horkler has been playing, they have AJ Reeves healthy, even though, he's not the most consistent guy in the world. It's another option the defense has to account for. Jared Bynum, who hasn't really been that great lately, he can score in bunches. Al Durham's playing the best basketball of his life right now. Nate Watson has really, kind of not been the Nate Watson that he was 2 years ago. We're seeing the emergence a little bit from Ed Crosswell, that former LaSalle transfer. He's been having some really nice games. I like Ed Crosswell splitting those minutes with Watson. Ed Cooley, he's a collegiate coach and I'm not. And we were all bitching about why Nate Watson wasn't playing. But now that Crosswell's splitting minutes in tourney time, he's a big portion and a big reason why they've been winning. And then, of course, Justin Minaya. You can throw Minaya on Agbaji. You can throw him on Remy if you have to. And he's obviously a little bit big to be maybe guarding Remy, but he's a lockdown, on-ball defender that can cause a lot of chaos. And I think that depending on who he guards, he's going to make their life hell. So, yeah, I like the Friars. Ultimately coming out of this region here in a matchup that I'm predicting Miami versus Providence, which would be nuts. Oh, man. I think I would have to go with the guard play and Larinaga, who is he's coaching so well right now. And the fact that he has just the lockdown defense on the perimeter, an emerging budding superstar in Jordan Miller, I think they come out of the Midwest and get into the Final Four. So that's where I'm going there. In the South region, a surprise, Michigan beating Tennessee. I never saw that coming. Never saw it coming. Villanova winning comfortably against Ohio State. So now we have this kind of mediocre matchup for DFS purposes between Michigan and Villanova. What's going to happen here is we're going to have to end up taking Hunter Dickinson because, Villanova's front court is susceptible to big games. Dickinson is playing his absolute best right now. The prices on this Thursday slate are ridiculous. He's only priced at 8-1. You can easily fit him, coming off a 53 against the Tennessee Vols team that was one of the few teams in conference in the SEC to contain Oscar Tshiebwe under 50, and they let Dickinson just go completely batshit ballistic and just tore them up. So yeah, it's going to be tough not to use him at that 8-1 price tag, kind of delving into the DFS side here. So I think that I'm picking Michigan. I think they made it. They weren't the play-in, game. A lot of us thought they should have been. A lot of us thought they shouldn't have got in at all. They're kind of pulling a UCLA, although they didn't have to be in the play-in. But you'll remember UCLA had to fight for their life last year. A lot of people thought they shouldn't have got in. That game against Michigan State could have gone easily the other way for the Spartans. Instead, UCLA made a run deep into the tournament before it finally ended against my man, Jalen Suggs. So I got Michigan there. The other side, this matchup between Arizona and Houston, man, Kelvin Sampson is the coach of the year. I don't care what anyone says. He has been phenomenal. The fact that Houston continues to win games and win games consistently, even though they have suffered a myriad of injuries. Obviously, Tremont Mark, who is going to be a stud, Marcus Sasser, one of their best scorers and shooters, and they're still winning games. They've just walloped Illinois in one of the lousiest coaching jobs of the tournament thus far. And there's been a few, but Coach Underwood's, benching of Andre Curbelo there. And I know a lot of people will argue with me and say, well, he was killing him. They needed playmakers. They weren't scoring. They scored 53 points. I don't care that Curbelo had a couple of turnovers. He's still one of your best playmakers and capable of setting the table for others. And I just really question that decision there. So Houston took care of them. They won very easily over UAB, which was a darling. We wanted Jelly Walker. And they're just doing it with a shortened roster. Without those two, Fabian White's dealing with back spasms. They're really monitoring his minutes. You'll see the last couple of games, he's been around 25, 27 minutes Hasn't been as productive. They're giving Reggie Chaney a little bit of more minutes. He's kind of a solid rebounder, high upside defender. Juwan Roberts, an elite rebounder. Ramon Walker, kind of spot duty. Right now, Kyler Edwards, Jamal Sheed, and Taze Moore are playing their best basketball of their lives. Those three can beat pretty much anyone left in the tournament. And then, you got the bigs with White, Carlton, Chaney, Roberts contributing. So this 8-man rotation is great for DFS purposes. I'm going to continue to be rolling all Houston guys all the time. They are the hammer game on that slate against Arizona. We just saw Arizona involved in a very tough overtime game against TCU. TCU, regardless of how you thought those calls went, TCU definitely got away with some. Arizona definitely got away with some. But I think that shows Arizona's defense is definitely beatable here. And Houston does not present a very good matchup for the Wildcats. That of all the teams they could possibly face here as a 5 seed, they are facing a very difficult 5 seed that they're going to have a lot of trouble with. So really it's going to come down to, and the amount of offensive rebounds that TCU had against Arizona and second, third putbacks was just insanity. We haven't seen Arizona get pushed around like that, I think, all season long, but 48 total rebounds for the Horned Frogs, compared to 44? Yeah, 44 for the Wildcats. Usually, generally between Coloco, Tabelis, and a little bit of Mather, and they out rebound everyone else. But Eddie Lampkin, that 2016 game, holy moly. That makes me feel like if Josh Carlton and Fabian White can stay out of foul trouble, and get Christian Coloco, who's playing the best basketball of his career, into some trouble. Tubelis, who's kind of fallen by the wayside here. He hasn't looked very good recently. The bad time for him to go cold. But whoever wins that rebounding matchup's definitely going to win this game. And I know we always harp on, guard play in March, and definitely look at Miami. That is the case. But here, this is very important. Rebounds is going to be the single biggest and most important stat that wins this game. And on the Arizona side, Dallin Terry is playing phenomenal. He's getting a ton of minutes. He is definitely the Arizona guy that I think if I was to use somebody against Houston, I'm most likely to use him. We do have to remember, because after every Houston slate, I find myself saying, and I try to remind everyone that this is why we don't target against Houston. The issue here is DK has made the prices so cheap on everyone that you almost have to consider it. Terry had only 5.8 after 3 straight games over 28 fantasy points. Actually 4, against a good Colorado team, UCLA, Wright State, which of course, was a DFS bonanza. And then that battle against TCU when he played 42 minutes. So he had 5 steals in that game, by the way. With Kerr Kriisa back and playing, though, it does feel maybe a little trappy to play Dallin Terry, because I do think he will be kind of chalky at that price. We did see his minutes, stay strong, but with Kriisa around, we're going to see opportunities go down. And his stat line, when you take away the 5 steals, 5 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 of 8 shooting, no free throws. He's probably not going to be getting 5 steals against Houston. So I do have concern there about him being a little trappy, but he's definitely my favorite Arizona play. And then we see, Pele Larson's price has jumped up to 5.1. That's probably a no-go with Kriisa there. Justin Kier at 4.6. His minutes were the ones that took the biggest hit with Kriisa back. Kriisa at 4.9. It'll be interesting. I think at that price of 4.9, we're going to see a lot of Kerr Kriisa. He did not look anywhere near 100%. We saw him, committing some silly fouls, shot 1 for 10 triples is what he attempted. Obviously, first game back in 10 days, maybe a little bit of rust, but I think people are going to talk about that 4.9 price for him like it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to nuke, and I really don't think it is. It's kind of like the Lawrence kid today from Middleton. I had mentioned that I felt like maybe he was a little bit on the weaker side for the Blue Raiders. I didn't really trust him, and it did work out that he was super chalky and he didn't come through. Sometimes we are able to dig a little deeper than just, hey, this guy's cheap. The math says we got to play him. The matchups still do matter. And that's where I really kind of look at here and say that this matchup for Kriisa does not suit him at all. And that 4.9 price, regardless of how many minutes he's going to play, is going to be tough for him to get 4x, let alone, 5-6x, some number you're going to need for tournaments. So I have Houston winning. I have Houston winning, and I have Houston, versus Michigan. I have Houston beating Michigan. I think that ultimately they'll give those guards a really hard time. They'll handcuff them. They could let Dickinson kind of do his thing, which is what the Vols ended up trying to do, but it didn't work out. But I think at the end of the day, if Tajay Moore and Kyler Edwards are going to play this well and continue, they're definitely better than Michigan. So Houston, moving on. On to the West, you have Gonzaga was pressed. Man, with all the upsets that happened that day in the second round especially, and Memphis, really in control there, it seemed like Gonzaga was done, but Drew Timme put the team on his back, carried them. Now they will be facing Arkansas. Arkansas put on a defensive clinic against New Mexico State, shut Teddy Buckets down. This matchup here between Gonzaga and Arkansas is interesting. I do ultimately think the Zags win. I think that Arkansas's defense has really impressed me. They're showing up to the point where I would be hesitant to, fully stack the Zags or anything like that. But I do think that, Jalen Williams will probably get into some foul issues trying to guard, Timme. Chet Holmgren is going to be really, the big X factor here. He's going to be guarded by kind of, a committee here. And I'm not sure that they're going to have much luck doing that. We know JD Note likes to drive. Umude, who's looked really good, he likes to do some work inside. Tone. There's going to be a lot of block opportunities here for Chet Holmgren, and he's going to be a big-time fantasy star. And I know that he let us down on last game, but expect a big bounce back from him against the Hogs and a probable win. I don't typically like to use guys against Gonzaga too often if I can help it. Their defense has been sharper than people give them credit for, and they have been able to hold people undervalue quite consistently throughout the year. But you're looking at these prices on Arkansas, $7K for Jalen Williams, even against Gonzaga, that's tough. He's generally pretty consistent. I really worry about that matchup for him. 7-8 for Note. Expect a lot of ownership there. In the tournament, especially, he's looked really good. He scored over 31 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5. So expect a lot of ownership there. Stanley Umude has really emerged as a consistent go-to option. At 6'1", there he's going to play, the entire game, back-to-back games. He's played all 40 minutes in each. Definitely don't mind him. And then with them being that cheap, you don't have to look to Devo Davis or Chris Likes, but you do have Audis Toney at 4-4. Again, he's played 39 plus minutes in 3 straight. You do see, though, 10 fantasy points against New Mexico State in 40 minutes, 14.5 against Vermont in 40 minutes. So you have that cheapie there you can use, but you also have these sub 8K options. And I think that if anything we've learned from this, especially that second round, trying to stuff in those upper tier guys, the value at this point is so kind of erratic that if you're relying on those big guys like, Paolo Banchero, he didn't really come through for us. And then we ended up playing like Robert Jones, who, of course, at 3K, or Jaden Akins, they're going to get 5 fantasy points. And then Holmgren didn't come through. And then, it just kind of fell apart from there on that particular day, for me at least, and, trying to do that 3-stud lineup. So I'm starting to really, go back to my roots and look at the mid-range build there. So I will have another show the night before this slate going in further. So, if you have questions or you're wanting to know a little bit more numbers, come back for that show on Wednesday night. But for now, this is just my initial thoughts. Looking at Gonzaga, prices of Timme at 8K, he'll be 1,000,000% owned. 8.7 Chet, like, come on. I do find it interesting. They dropped the price of Anton Watson back down to 4.7. We do know in close games like there against Memphis, his minutes dropped below 20. So that is where you do have to be concerned. But at 4.7, they are baiting us in to use him a little bit. I am definitely interested if we can eke out about 18 minutes from him. I think he does pay that off. But you're probably using him as a leverage, off of the chalkier Timme or Holmgren, hoping for foul trouble for one of those guys. I don't think that it makes sense to use Watson and Holmgren and Timme, but definitely is a fade type option there if you're going to not pay up for Chet at the 8.7, which is certainly paying up. Then you don't want to use or I'm saying you do want to use Watson. Strother has struggled this moment. He didn't get to play a lot in their tournament last year, so he's kind of fallen off a bit. The price of 5.7 is certainly intriguing when you consider he's going to play, mid-30s minutes. I definitely think he's a GPP option. Same thing with Rasir Bolton at 5.2. I feel like he's pretty cheap. Good option for about 20 to 22 fantasy points. And then Nemhard is a nice GPP option at 7.6. I mean, he keeps churning out 30 plus fantasy points. Why not continue to use him? So I do have Gonzaga winning that matchup. Texas Tech versus Duke. I think, Duke is obviously the much tougher matchup for Gonzaga. So they're certainly going to be rooting for Texas Tech. I think Duke would do similar to what Memphis did against Gonzaga. It took a Herculean effort from Timmy to do it. I don't know that he would have it in him against Duke. I think they could beat them, but they're not going to be able to play like they did against Memphis and escape there late. So Texas Tech, a much better matchup for Gonzaga because they like to play slow. They could kind of force things and take control. I do ultimately think that Texas Tech's a bad matchup for Duke, though, which may surprise some people. So in this game, I do pick Duke to beat Texas Tech, and I think that interestingly enough, with Duke dealing with some injuries, there's an ankle injury going there for AJ Griffin. So he missed some time there. We'll have to see how he works. They're relying on Jeremy Roach more, who has played really well in those 2 tournament games, but it's Jeremy Roach. Are we there? Are we trusting him against a very tough Texas Tech defense? Trevor Keels, who has completely kind of lost his starting spot there to Roach. They're barely using him. His price is all the way down to 5.3, which is really kind of a Beatty type price for me when you consider this kid's been $7K most of the year and it's a projected first round pick, but that feels like a very bad play as well. Wendell Moore, Mark Williams, Paulo, all kind of GPP-ish guys here against this Texas Tech team. Paulo owes us one though. And then Texas Tech side prices are all sub 6K. Kevin Obanor, he's Kevin. Oh, Kevin has returned, man. He's looking like Oral Roberts Kevin again, and it's damn fun to see. Against Notre Dame, 15 points, 15 rebounds. Against Montana State, he had 10 points, 11 rebounds. Like, let's go, man. He was so fun to watch on Oral Roberts last year with Mad Max Ebnis. I'm really kind of excited about him at 5'6". I think he could do some damage here. I think we might want to chase that. Of course, at 5'5", Bryson Williams is just like a cash staple. His minutes are going to be kind of hovering around the mid-20s. He had some foul issues last game, but again, he's over that 20 fantasy point mark. He's really not going to go much further past that, but a safe cash lock. McCullough at 5'4", love that. Shannon's 5K. You're getting down into these Marcus Santos Salva plays and they're just okay. You're taking, if you're going to go the extreme pay up route. However, DK has made pricing soft enough that, while that sucks because it's going to be probably a high scoring slate, it's nice because we can build, some pretty strong mid-range lineups that we can utilize to put up a big number. So I'm picking Texas Tech to beat Duke. I'm picking Gonzaga to beat Arkansas. I'm picking Gonzaga to beat Texas Tech. And I think we're going to see that, a matchup between them ultimately. And I might surprise you what I say in the East. So North Carolina, Hubert Davis playing out of their minds, heating up at the right time. They are really strong at every position. Brady Manick playing unbelievably. Brady Manick has been so damn good. It's amazing. The young Larry Bird out there. A lot of people say. So it'll be interesting. This is a juggernaut, of past powers between UCLA and North Carolina. I want to say the Tar Heels are going to lose because that, clock's about to strike midnight, and we know how inconsistent they can be. I'm shocked they hung 93 on Baylor going up against this Bruins defense. Do they come back down to earth? It's tough to say, man. I don't want to pick against them because how hot they are. I do think UCLA's a tad bit fraudulent. I will give them credit for that St. Mary's win. I did not see that coming. But I think that with Baycott likely getting, Cody Riley and Miles Johnson in foul trouble, Hawkes inevitably starting to cool off like we saw last game, I think the Heels have enough, at all positions to pull this off here. And both teams' benches are kind of, mediocre, so I don't think that's going to help the Bruins if Baycott does his thing and gets them in foul trouble. So I'm picking the Tar Heels there. And then the Purdue versus St. Peter's matchup. Holy crap. So I did say I did feel strongly. One of the few things that actually ended up doing well on Sunday was calling the vintage Marcus Carr performance against Purdue. We love guards against Purdue. We know that Purdue perimeter defense is very soft. DVP wise, we can target against them confidently. Pick and roll defense is really kind of rancid. I did think Carr and Timmy Allen would have that going. Allen got into major foul trouble, didn't work out. Purdue wins. And then another for me, shocking upset from St. Peter's beating Murray State. A really terrible tournament for KJ Williams. I have to say I'm really disappointed in the way he played, his performance overall. I really thought the Racers were going to make a run here once they got, Kentucky knocked out, and it just didn't work for them. St. Peter's versus Purdue. That's going to be a really fun game. That's one we're going to want to stack up for sure. St. Peter's defense has been really strong all season long. We did talk about on a show recently, Mike Kutry and myself, about how St. Peter's, even though their defense is good, they're still on the smaller side. They do get wrecked in terms of, giving up big rebounding, stat lines, points to opposing 4s and 5s and front court players in general. So this is the game for Trevion Williams, and Zach Edey. It's always tough because, we know they split minutes, but lately, man, if you can get to, you're trusting your gut and throwing your main lineup on a T-Will special, it's not a bad idea. Against Texas, he had a 37% usage rate. Edey had a 50% usage rate. So both bigs were just tanking them. But 24 minutes of action for T-Will, 13 field goal attempts, made 10 of them, a lot of mid-range jumpers. T-Will is a devastating mid-range jump shooter, and you don't see that very much in today's game in the dunk or 3-point game. Just you get in the mid-range there, and he does the whole, Hakeem Olajuwon thing and hits them at a deadly rate. 7 rebounds, 2 assists, really strong performance from him. Edey had 11 and 10, only 15 minutes. He had some foul trouble in the first half. So, obviously we'll see how it shakes out here with lineup builds. I suspect T-Will still be the cheaper of the two. And I think he'll probably see about 25 minutes. And that'll be enough to do damage against this St. Peter's defense. And of course, you're going to see Jaden Ivey, Eric Hunter, and Sasha Stefanovic take most of those minutes. I'm okay with Ivey. I generally like Ivey when he's not chalky. I think that they're going to rely heavily on Purdue. He could rack up a lot of assists. I don't know that he'll have to be the one making shots here, but I can't at this point. How can I count out St. Peter's with the way they're playing? We have a rising star and with their coaching staff, Shaheen Holloway, former Seton Hall guy, in the tournament. I remember watching some of his tournament games, or one of them. I think it was against Oregon. I'd have to check that though. Pretty sure it was against Oregon, and he had a really nice performance there. So he's clearly going to get, I would say, after St. Peter's loses, if they lose, they might go to the Final Four. The Seton Hall job that just opened up with Willard moving on to Maryland. So they're a really tough unit. They don't back down. They're very cool quote / presser from Shaw Holloway about how, they're New Jersey kids. They don't push, they don't get pushed around. They do the pushing around. Casey Ndefo is a fantastic play. This is going to be one of the toughest, environments for him going against that front court of Zach Edey and T-Will. So it'll be tough for me to trust going against him. So against the Kentucky team, it was really, he didn't do a lot against Murray State, who didn't have necessarily a big, center or a traditional down low player. And Defo just muscled Williams around when he was on him. We saw the guards, though, against Kentucky. So that's Daryl Banks, who has the 26% usage rate. Doug Edert, who comes off the bench but has one of the best offensive ratings in the country, shoots 43% from long range, just like one of those guys that looked like he would have been on the Monmouth bench mob, 5-6 years ago. Now he's coming out here and taking all these shots. And he's one of those kids that people like because he has this great electric energy about him. He has a hell of a mustache, and he's got the bedhead that just endures him to people. So they're going to need a big game from those guys. I do have interest in them once we see, pricing for that slate and how it shakes out. I definitely lean Edert, especially if he's like low 4K again, over Banks. Edert comes off the bench. The minutes for Banks tend to be a little higher, but I think at this point they need Edert scoring. They're going to need him, to log some big minutes, and the tournament so far, 25 minutes, 24 minutes. The game against Monmouth in the one of the late games there, he had 32 minutes, 20 points. I got to the free throw line 9 times. He is going to be reliant on his scoring, but if he's sub 5K, we can definitely handle that. So I like the St. Peter's guards here. If you get into a pinch, maybe you could, take a flyer on Matthew Lee or Isaiah Dasher if you think his minutes will go up. I thought Dasher might actually see some minutes. He was pretty good on Portland a couple of years ago. Actually a really devastating on-ball defender, and his minutes have been kind of trending towards 20 recently, but then he went back down to about 16 against Murray State. So kind of hard to trust him. I'm on the Eater show. I have to pick Purdue. I don't think I can consciously, in my mind, figure out a way that St. Peter's will do enough to stop the front court of Purdue. It will not be a blowout by any means. I will definitely, let's see, what do they got it as? Didn't even have it up yet. I guess DK doesn't have it because a New Jersey team, right? Yeah, so I don't have a current line on that one, but I would have interest if it's like, plus 10 or more or something. But ultimately picking Purdue, I don't want to. I think there's a chance to lose. And then North Carolina versus Purdue, that would be a very, very tough situation for Purdue. I think that they're going to be having a hell of a time trying to guard that North Carolina backcourt. RJ Davis just showed why he is, one of the most underrated guards on this team in the conference, in the country, by scoring 30 real. Caleb Love, we know what he's about at this point. And I think that's a really intriguing game for DFS and real life purposes. Bench wise, Purdue has more bodies to throw at North Carolina, so it's going to depend on the foul trouble and the pick and roll game. But I think the Heels are they're hot at the right time, and I'm going to pick them over Purdue and facing Gonzaga. I do think at the end of the day Gonzaga will curb them, an 8-10 point win. And then I do, now that Tennessee's out, I think I have to pick Houston in a game against Miami there that I picked. I think Houston wins it, and I think we see a Houston versus Gonzaga final. And I have shades of Baylor in my mind, although Baylor had depth last year. I think Houston could really, have that physicality against the Zags, the kind that really bothers Drew Timme. Anytime we've seen a big physical, front court player push Timme around, he's kind of folded a little bit, and he finally pushed back last game and went off. So maybe this is the new Timme that's not going to be pushed around, but I think Houston could definitely give them a run for their money. But at the end of the day, I'm picking Gonzaga. I think they finally get through, and I think Mark Few does it. So that is my tourney rundown with this one. All right, so what's up, Josh? Josh says he thinks it's Purdue minus 12.5. I would be interested in St. Peter's plus 12.5, honestly. I mean, how could you not? Purdue's perimeter defense being as putrid as it is, and how hot St. Peter's is, they are just playing. So it's a dangerous spot too for the other team, because St. Peter's has nothing to lose at this point, right? They've made their program a bunch of money. Shaheen Holloway's on cloud 9. He's going to get paid a fat amount of money, to coach Seton Hall. I imagine, if not them, then it's going to be somebody else, right? Someone's going to come calling. Their players feel like they can beat anyone. Once they knocked off Kentucky, the way they carried themselves against Murray State was impressive. They controlled that game from start to finish. KJ Williams never got involved. There was no cohesion. It was really bad. The Racers got out coached and outworked in every facet of the game, shockingly enough. So how could you not like St. Peter's to cover with that roster, that swagger? Purdue is the team that's going to be feeling, the nerves and might find themselves playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win. And we know that, from previous upsets, that's a really tough place for the favorites to be. And I could see that happening with this Purdue squad. So I'd love to see St. Peter's go all the way, man. How awesome would it be to see St. Peter's make the Final Four and really, pull shades of late, 2000s George Mason or something like that. So that's my rundown. Looking at lines, I mentioned Providence plus 7.5 seems pretty nice. I do like North Carolina's total. The game total is 142.5 versus UCLA. I definitely like the over. It's plus money right now. No, I'm sorry, it's not. but I like that. There's a SGP on DraftKings. You go over 142.5 and then take North Carolina money line. You get a nice little parlay there at plus money. So I definitely kind of like the heels there. I'm just not a believer in this UCLA team, and I wasn't to start the season either. I thought they were being overrated because of how that run last year could have ultimately went down. Miami -2.5 versus Iowa State. I don't think the Cyclones have the. I mean, they don't have the offense to keep up if Miami's clicking on all cylinders. They needed a really Herculean performance from Gabe Kalscheur to just win the game. Brockington was a no-show. I think we're going to see a ton of turnovers. Tyrese Hunter, who I love for the Cyclones, I don't think he has the offensive game to really carry the team either, at least yet. So I like Miami spread there. Houston +2. Yep, sign me up. I'm all over that. I'm taking all the action on Houston. So I'm booking bets on Twitter. I'm booking bets on Discord. If you want to take action against me on Arizona, I'm all for it. I'm still looking for more. I'm looking to book more. Michigan +4.5. Definitely got to like that. That Duke +1 line seems kind of trappy. I'm probably not betting that. And then Arkansas +9. I don't think Gonzaga's going to be beating them by 9+. So even though I think they win, I think Arkansas can definitely cover. All right. So moving on to the CBI real quick. We had that DFS today, which was fun. There is the semifinals now. It's really just kind of lame, right? I don't know why they couldn't have just waited for those games to finish so that we could have gotten these next games and had it be a 4-game slate again, because that's really much better than a 2-game slate. Big surprising win. Drake had a 19-point lead, and they dropped it to Wilmington, the 9 seed. I thought for sure Drake was going to win the CBI tournament. I really like my guy, Tucker DeVries. We did see a really amazing game between Northern Colorado and UNC Asheville. Both teams are littered with strong players. Dalen Kuntz, former Colorado Buffaloes transfer on Northern. He went nuts. Asheville, Pember, former Vols transfer, LJ Thorpe. Both of those guys went nuts. We had them. And then the way that Middle Tennessee undressed Boston U by 30 was a tad bit surprising to me. The day before that, we made a little money betting Boston University money line at plus money against UNCG. Didn't take them today because I know how good the Blue Raiders have been, but I certainly didn't see them winning by 30. And they really shut down everybody on that team except Mathon. And then Ohio losing to a tough Abilene Christian. This Abilene's defense and their rotation is so deep, and they're so tough. I saw that happening with Ohio. That game between them and Middle 10 is going to be a bit of a grinder, so it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top there. Those games will be on ESPN2. I think betting-wise, there's nothing on DraftKings, but let's see. I'm kind of like the DraftKings poster boy for bets. I know I do everything for them, even though they treat me like a stepchild. Let's see. What are we doing here? Versus ACU basketball. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we can find. Oh no. Okay, so I don't see any. Probably be something like 3 or 4 though, I would imagine, the Blue Raider side. So anything under 5, I think you take them. I think they're playing really, really well right now. And then the game between UNCW, which is still a surprising win, versus Northern Colorado. I think you take Northern Colorado money line and spread there, and you ride them. They're gonna be playing the Blue Raiders on the 23rd, I think, for that CBA title. So pretty fun. There is a game I really like. You can bet between the CIT, formerly known as the CIT, is now the Basketball Classic, between Southern Utah and UTEP. The Miners are -4.5. I really like -4.5 for the Miners. They have a really, really nice roster. We've seen them on the slate a couple of times this year. They had a nice outing. They whooped on Western Illinois, the Roughnecks, who have been a pretty porous defense, so we can't get too excited, I guess. But in that game, it was nice to see guys like Sully Boom, triple-double. He had 20, 12, and 10. Like, whew, hot and bothered by that. Keontae Kennedy had 22 and 15. Jamari Sibley had 11 and 6. Like, they've got the bodies. And this team is primarily built from transfers. Like they have Alf Hollins from Oregon State. Sibley himself is from Georgetown, last year's Georgetown team. Kristen Agnew is from North Alabama. So they've got a lot of guys that they built. Keontae Kennedy from Xavier. So I like them. I like them to win that against Southern Utah -4.5. So if you're looking to bet on some basketball classic, which is the fourth postseason tournament, the worst of the four, but still, if you're looking to bet action and have some Tuesday afternoon basketball, that's the play. All right, DFS time. The NIT slate of 2 games. Would have definitely loved to have more. Yeah, that 4-game slate would have definitely been better than this, but 2 games is still better than none, I guess, right? So St. Bonaventure versus Virginia, Vanderbilt versus Xavier. Earlier in the show, somebody asked me if they should be betting Xavier. I don't know, man. I think I like Vanderbilt +3.5, but I'm also a big Stackhouse guy. I'm a really big Commodores fan. I think Scottie Pippen and Jordan Wright are an excellent duo. Liam Robbins is playing really well right now. They just have the pieces to beat Xavier. And strangely enough, Xavier, who I thought wouldn't care, is playing their best basketball of the season. So it definitely makes sense to be, maybe looking that way. It was a bit odd against Florida. Xavier did blow them out, but Fremantle didn't start, and there was talk of he just backed out. But he came off the bench and played 16 minutes, and he had 10.7 rebounds and a steal. They ended up starting Paul Scruggs, Jack Nungy, Colby Jones, Adam Kunkel, and Nate Johnson. So worth monitoring. I don't know why he didn't start. And minutes-wise, at just 16, they undressed Florida. I think Florida was done and ready to go. But Vanderbilt, like I said, at the beginning of this NIT tournament and prior to it starting when the bracket was released, I thought this was a really good acquisition tool for Jerry Stackhouse, not only from high school, senior standpoint and recruiting high school kids and exposure, but even the portal. The portal is going to become a really strong tool for building your lineup, and it already has. I mean, we're seeing teams this year, that have primarily, their starting lineups made from transfers, and they're doing well. UAB was one. Kentucky was one. Obviously they were out of the tournament now, but they made it far in terms of making the tournament. The portal, you'll see me post all the time, all week. The portal already has some massive names in it. Then there's going to be more as teams get out. I thought it was interesting before I get into the slate that Tom Izzo was saying they want to get back to, having that tough center, being known as a defensive, front court presence. And they're going to be looking in the portal for a center. And there's some pretty tasty centers, from Arizona State. Jalen Graham's in the portal. I think he would be a fine fit for them. Utah Valley kid, Fardaz Amkoik. He was thought to be in the drafted this year. I thought he was going to enter the NBA draft as well, but it sounds like he is, he's hit the portal and he's looking to play in a high major team to kind of raise his stock a little bit. I could see him going there. I'm a big fan of Peyton Sparks, Ball State transfer. He's a center, young kid, double machine. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Spartans do. I actually think the Spartans could be really good next year, depending on who returns and if they play AJ Hoggart 35 minutes a night. So with that being said, sidebar, I know I'm on Vandy for that game. St. Bonaventure, we'll start with St. Bonaventure and Virginia. Virginia -3, total of 125.5. By the way, the total versus North Texas was 109. I was super busy over the weekend. I didn't get a chance to really load much in the bet tracker, but I did mention that I thought that was a decent spot, and it did go over because even Virginia 109 is laughably, low. But 125.5 over under. Cavs, I am certainly looking their direction here. I think that the toughness overall for the Bonnies could give Virginia trouble, but I think overall Virginia they've got the I think they have the slight edge. Tempo-wise, Virginia 357th in the country. They're kind of seem to be, going in and out between last place and second to last place. And St. Bonaventure 252. Starting with the Bonnies, looking at prices, it's pretty fair. Attaway at 6'7", he's a pretty streaky scorer, shooter. Oshini at 7'3" is an interesting price. I think he could actually have a really big game against Virginia's front court by, getting Cafaro and Shedrick into foul trouble and being left unchecked down there. So he's probably my favorite at 7'3" from this team. I think Kyle Lofton at 7'1" is really quite cheap. I wonder if he's going to go overlooked a bit because it is Virginia. But, I mean, keep in mind it's a damn 2-game slate. So you're going to have to play guys, in bad spots. Lofton continues to play 40 minutes. He never comes off the floor. The stat line has been way worse this year. His regression this year definitely hurt him a little bit. Kudos for him for coming back. But St. Bonaventure just, they couldn't do enough to play for a tourney bid this year like last season. Jaren Holmes is playing about 38 minutes a night. He is actually starting to wake up in this tournament. He had 29 fantasy points against Colorado, and then 37 against Oklahoma. So waking up, he is. I think that he is very much in play at 6'5". That is a very cheap price for him. I think Ocean and Holmes are my two favorite. And then I would be looking at Lofton and Attaway and Welch. I tend to look at those guys in the as kind of like GPP alt plays. For Virginia, my man Reese Beekman, he's 7K now. I think that'll keep his ownership down, even for a 2-game slate. But man, he's woke up. He is playing really well ever since that game against Louisville. Early March or whatever, where he's had 52. He's just been, churning it out. 31, 25, which was his down game, 34.5, and then 41.5 against North Texas. In 45 minutes, they went to overtime. He played every single minute. He took 9 shots, which was really good for him, made 6 of them, 7 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 steals, 13 points. So his assist rate's very high, especially the last month of the season. Contributes in rebounds, scores just enough between 8 to 13 points. So 7K is still technically a little on the cheap side for him. It is a tough matchup against the Bonnies, but shoot, he's gonna get it done. I think the Bonnies' offensive rebounding is bad, and Beekman gets a lot of one and done opportunities. So expect his rebounds and assist number to be high. We'll have to see, if he can make shots to really balloon that number up. But that's my guy. Kihei Clark at 6'1", expect him to be chalky. I can't do it with Clark, man. I just can't. He's been with his team so long. He has games where he looks like the absolute best player on the court, can't be stopped, and then other times he is the absolute worst player on the court and can't do anything right. Jaden Gardner is only 6'6". That is a nice price for him. And then for cheapies, you have the Francisco Cafaro at 3'5", which is certainly a playable option. Caden Shedrick at 4'4", also cheap. Armin Franklin at 5'5", also cheap. Franklin just hasn't developed in this system. You would have thought he would have turned into like a Kyle Guy or a Ty Jerome like a couple years ago, but his shot has been really awful. He did shoot 5 of 7 from long range against North Texas, which was nice to see, but he's generally been shooting, 2 for 5, 1 for 4, 0 for 6. Really bad numbers. I think you can get away. Again, you have to. It's 2 games. With playing multiple Virginia guys, with Shedrick losing his starting spot, he's a little riskier. So you can get leverage playing him, where I think the field might go towards Cafaro just to get that savings at 3.5. It's not as if Cafaro's a slam dunk lock play at that 3.5. He has played 30 minutes and 20 minutes in back-to-back games, but he could very well just play, 13 minutes and be totally foul prone. He fouled out against UNT in 20 minutes and had 4 fantasy points. So if you find that extra 900 to play, Shedrick, and Cafaro has a really bad game or fouls out early, then Shedrick could be your leverage there. But it's not as if he's been putting up very good numbers either, and he is also extremely foul prone. So there is a part of me that thinks Ocean will just foul both out. So tread lightly. Vanderbilt versus Xavier. So I kind of just talked about it a little bit in terms of betting. Xavier's 3.5 point favorite. Total is 142.5. I do like Vandy plus 3.5. they have been in some that game, and I know nobody watched it except me probably. My youngest daughter had her birthday party at a trampoline park, so I had to go to that, and there was I shouldn't say I had to go to it. I had fun. But they had, in their little restaurant-esque cafeteria thing, they had the 4 TV thing going. And that Vanderbilt game was on, and man, it was really fun to watch. 70-68 overtime win for the Commodores. Scottie Pippen just relentless, 32 real points. And he racked up free throws at the end, which is where a lot of his points came from. But he hasn't been able to string together that consistency. So I do kind of feel like the fade is in play here, even on a 2-game slate, where if he, goes for 50 plus and you faded, you're absolutely done. No chance of cashing. But the leverage is just massive. But with that being said, I still might be leaning towards playing him more so than not. We do have Rodney Chapman coming off 41 minutes in that overtime game, 9 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. So that is going to be a main source of value for us. I would trust him just because the minutes are there, even though the fantasy point per minute number might not be over the Virginia value at 4.1. So he's going to be kind of my main source. Jordan Wright's price dropped to 5.9 after a really quite dumpy game in that Dayton. Dayton's defense, low-key, really strong unit. And Jordan Wright just didn't play well. Shot 1 for 8 from the field, which really hurt him. But he had 6 rebounds, couple steals. The price takes a tumble from $7K down to 5.9, and I'm, licking my chops, feeling good about Jordan Wright. So even against the Xavier team at 5.9, has guard forward eligibility, I am absolutely going to be playing Jordan Wright. Could be playing 3 or 4 Vandy here in a spot that is tough against Xavier. But yeah, Chapman and Wright locks. Still leaning Pippen as well at 9K if I can find it. Liam Robbins at 5K. This isn't a matchup he can take advantage of with the size. We know Fremantle and Nunji's been a pretty stout, front court. They've got other guys, Miles or such, that can definitely do some good things defensively. So he's probably the odd man out for me, but 5K is a really cheap price for Robbins and his talent. High rebounding rate, high block rate, dating back to his days with, last season with Minnesota when he played there next to Marcus Carr. And then even beyond that, when he was on Drake, he was a 30% shot rate guy. So he has the talent to do this. This is one of those kind of, math / underpriced plays where matchups might not matter, but I would be remiss if I didn't say this is kind of a bad spot for him. If we do think that it's a bad spot or we think he's going to get into foul trouble, something like that, QMB, Malora Brown at 4.2, give him about 24, 25 minutes. I think he makes value there. And then, of course, you have Miles Stute there at 4.8, who has been a really big contributor for them the last month and a half, playing big minutes against Dayton. He didn't look too hot, 6 points, 5 rebounds, but he was on the floor for 32 minutes. He's had some games prior to, Dayton and Belmont, where against Kentucky he had 24, Bama 28, and Georgia 22. Those were fantasy point totals. So we know Stute can play. It's just he's a bit streaky. You don't want to trust him probably in cash. On the Xavier side, Vandy's defense, man, it's tough. Really, really tough. I think we're probably looking at, and this is, an order of priority for Xavier. Adam Kunkel at 4.3, especially if he starts. We're locking and loading that. He has a guard forward eligibility, played a ton. Nate Johnson at 5.3 holds a lot of intrigue against me, although I think his shooting against Vanderbilt could struggle slightly. At 5.3, that's really cheap, and you can fit him into a balanced build or a hybrid. Man, I'm tired. A hybrid balanced lineup, with him in it as well, and feel pretty decent about it. He's coming off a really big game that I didn't think I would see from him this season with the way he played earlier, but 16, 5, and 1. He took 10 threes, made just 3 of them, but that volume is really intriguing for a guy at 5'3". Your big guns here are Nunj at 8.3, Colby Jones at 7.7, Fremantle down there at 6.3. If he doesn't start, I think it's pretty tough. I mean, clearly it looks like he's probably going to play, right? Even if it's off the bench. But man, I would feel really bad about using him and then all of a sudden, he's not starting because we're not using him today. So I think you're using Fremantle in your alt builds because if people are scared to play him and he comes in sub 30% on a 2-game slate, you could have some major leverage. But I don't know how you can use him in your main lineup there at the 6.3. It's a good price, but man, if you take the bagel, you're absolutely done. So we'll see. It could be nothing. He could start, and I'll look at getting him in at that point if that's the case. Kunkel definitely benefited from that start, though. Dwan Odom played really well last game in 27 minutes. He had 10, 7, and 3 over the hapless Florida Gators. So you have some cheapy options here you can definitely use. Core-wise on the two-gamer, for me, Jordan Wright, that should be a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer, easy. Reese Beekman, who is also going to double as the posh play, because I think he should be lower owned. 2-game slate, so it's relative. It'll probably still be 30%, but anything that's not 60% maybe considered low owned. And then the third member of the core, I think if he starts, it's Adam Kunkel. I mean, 4.3, that's kind of way too cheap, but otherwise Rodney Chapman is the safe value. So I'm running lots of Vanderbilt, as I typically do when they're on the slate. Really like this team, and I think Stackhouse, like I said, is going to win the NIT and use that to get recruits. Let's pull up Prize Picks. See what we got going on here. Still have some other NIT games too. Wake Forest versus Texas A&M, which is on the slate, of course. I think those games are different days. And then Washington State versus BYU. The Aggies, man, they're playing pissed off. I think that they will ultimately beat Wake Forest, but that's going to be a really fun game. Wake Forest could force so many turnovers against those Aggies guards that Londis could put up like a 60 spot. But at the end of the day, I think the Aggies win. I do think WSU takes care of business against BYU, and that makes a Final Four of Texas A&M, WSU, Vandy, who I think beats Xavier, and then Virginia. So if I had to pick a champ, I'm picking Vanderbilt as my champ. So I just think they'll probably face like Texas A&M, which would be a pretty fun game. All right. Prize Picks. Gotta get my Prize Picks. Prize Picks has been really good, by the way. We've picked up the slack for some of the extreme busts that we had for DFS, like Walker Kessler. We made up for it with some strong Prize Picks options. So let's pull my top 3 from what we're staring at here. Okay, so those other 2 NIT games are on Wednesday. I like Jaden Gardner over 25.3 fantasy points against the Bonnies. Kind of like a game that maybe, 18 and 12 type of game for him. I know Ocean's going to be down there, but he's going to have to do a lot for Virginia, and I think he's kind of found his way now in this program, playing confidently. Jordan Wright, man, 25.1. It's kind of borderline for me. I like the over because I have him on around 29 to 30 fantasy points. So I'm still taking his over there at over 25. If you get to it tomorrow morning or, later, if it gets to like 26.5 or something, which it might, I would probably back off at that point. And then as far as anything else, I like Jaren Holmes over 12.5 real points. He's playing well. I think he's gonna make some key baskets here, to keep them in the game against Virginia. And I think that Virginia might start slow after that OT game, but ultimately I think we'll see some pretty good fantasy scores even out of a lower paced game. There are some, and that's it for those games tomorrow, but the board's up for Wednesday and Thursday, and there's definitely some that I'm seeing that look pretty interesting, like Stanley Amude over 18.5 combo, PRA, points, rebounds, assist against Gonzaga. I think solid chance to hit that. Andrew Nemhard over 24.5 RPA or PRA. I think that's pretty solid. I like, the assist and everything. He's got a good chance to hit 30 in that particular matchup. And then let's see what they got our guy Bryson Williams at. because they've been giving us about 21 on him, and he just keeps on hitting it lately. They may have adjusted, though. No, 20.8. So even against Duke, Bryson Williams over 20.8 fantasy points. So if you don't mind rolling over to the next day or 2 days out to get the best number, I would throw that Bryson Williams line into some of your Tuesday ones. And then Kevin O'Banner over 18.9 fantasy points. He's looking good, folks. He's looking like that Oral Roberts guy that we know and love. All over it. All right. I think that is it. Rest of the week schedule. So there won't be an article for the 2-gamer. I gave my thoughts on it. So check that out. The trackers will be loaded with exposures for prize picks, MME, all that good stuff. I will likely not be back until Wednesday, though, for a show. So Wednesday, I will do my full, in-depth slate breakdown for the 4-gamer, give you guys a core, DVP spots, Posh play of the day, all that good stuff. Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So make sure you're there for that. And then Thursday night, I will have something for the Friday DFS slate, talking about the other Sweet 16 rounds, going a little more in depth once we see the prices for that. And then I will have something for the Elite 8 too, probably a daytime show on Saturday. So appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the continued support. We've been kicking some booty, making some money, having lots of screenshots from some big wins. We've had a couple of FTN members being tournaments in back-to-back days, Saturday, Sunday. So you definitely love to see it. Get over to FTN Daily, sign up, get that 20% off, hop in the Discord, and make some money with us. Thanks, guys. Best of luck.